Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation. We're going to be getting into an article from the Journal of Cell Metabolism, and it is named Timing of Daily Calorie Loading Affects Appetite and Hunger Responses Without Changes in Energy Metabolism in Healthy Subjects with Obesity. So it is a clinical and translational report. It's 32 pages, and there is lots of golden nuggets in there that we are going to share with you today in how to adopt a fasting lifestyle to help you achieve all of your weight loss and health goals by using fasting as the tool to get you there. Excited as we're going to dive in. If you are new to the podcast, we want to welcome you in. Thanks for giving us a shot. Thanks for listening. However you found us, we're glad you're here. If you want to know more about why we do this week in and week out, why we have our challenges and coaching and resources on the website, ultimately, the why behind Fasting for Life, head back to episode 0, episode 1, give them a listen. Gives you a little insight into how fasting transformed our lives, and ultimately why we got motivated to help others as well, because it was so transformational. So
Yeah.
thanks for adding us to your health and weight loss journey, like I mentioned. If you're a long-term listener, if you're an OG, welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for your likes, shares, downloads, and most importantly, our favorite kind of reviews, the 5-star kind. Thankfully, we are blessed enough to have lots of those as they are a favorite. So we want to give a shout out here, Tommy, this morning to Schmo882. And they said 48 and down 100 plus. So can't speak highly enough about this podcast. Well, thank you, Schmo. Congratulations to you on your journey.
Yeah.
Well done. Incredible results. And it's a really cool shout out. As someone in the medical field, I appreciate the accurate breakdown of the studies and white papers. The addition of practical life applications and ways to implement these tactics created value that I've not seen anywhere else. Well, thank you so much.
Wow.
For your kind words. I've lost over 100 pounds, 109 to be exact. Yes, damn right. You deserve every single one of those 109 pounds.
Amazing.
While varying my strategy throughout the process, which has been right at 10 months, the fact that they advocate for what works for you versus, by the way, that's what we're going to talk about today. This is the only way, brings tremendous value and options that work and are malleable to many different lifestyles.
Love that.
I feel like we could have written this.
Yeah.
But we didn't.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, though.
Yeah, this is exactly why we do what we do.
Yeah.
Consistency over time, not perfection, has worked wonders for me. Really appreciate all the input and feedback I've received from y'all. Now on to lower my golf score as well. Well,
there
Schmo,
you
go. As a resident golfing hack, a weekend golfer, I don't play as much as I would love to. Used to play back in the day. And I have no help for you in that regard, because all I know is in my personal experience that from one swing to the next, it can be glory and it can be tears, but it is one of the most beautiful games on the planet. So I wish you all the best in your golf game, and hopefully you can share a testimony of how you figured it out one day, and you can email us and let me know, because I could use all the help in the world. So Tommy.
Yeah. just one more shout out to Schmo here, because just real quick, as you take off the weight, and that's a substantial amount of weight to take off, obviously, every pound can lead to a little bit more energy being unlocked, a little bit easier time, whether you're walking around the golf course or you're going to hiking or you're chasing around your kids or your grandkids, whatever it might be. When you unlock a little bit of that, and you can get that first taste of like, oh man, I wasn't able to do that before. And then there's probably more of that to come as you keep taking a little bit more of the weight off. That can really help during some of those tough moments of fasting frustration, fasting fatigue, fasting boredom, and
Plateaus.
plateaus, temptation to break a fast early, not really sure, if it's worth making that next like change in your fasting strategy because it's not exactly going as quickly or as consistently as you'd like. But keeping that in mind, that's a big carrot for a lot of us if we can just keep that, front and center for like, should I really keep going? Yes, you absolutely should. And like use Schmo's story as inspiration because I certainly will.
And we have no doubt that you're going to achieve that goal. So, along the way, I'm assuming, Schmo, that there were sticking points and it wasn't all roses, but you had the
Hmm.
adaptability, you had the knowledge, and ultimately you had the strategy and the plan to get there. And that's what we do. And that's what we want to do with each one of these episodes. So as we jump into this Journal of Cell Metabolism article, Tommy, one of the things that we've shifted our mindset on over the years is this idea of meal timing and aligning your meals with circadian biology.
Hmm.
And we've done multiple episodes on how your insulin sensitivity and your potential blood sugar variance and what we call area under the curve with blood sugar volatility affecting sleep. We know that eating later in the day can cause some issues for some folks. And Schmo highlights it perfectly that it is not a one size fits all. And we've recently seen some big changes in some of our coaching group where folks have been stuck for a while, or hunger cues have reared up, or their late night evening dinner strategy has kind of fallen by the wayside and it's no longer moving the needle, and frustration sets in. So one of the cool things about this article is it's going to reaffirm some of the thought processes that we've had recently, where we've, over the last few months, probably over the last year and a half, where a big lever that you can pull to stay consistent and help with the hunger that can come with fasting. And that's really the focus point for today is being able to manage the behavior later in the day based on your hunger cues.
Mm.
So when we get into this today, we really want to talk about it from a perspective of hunger and consistency. And it's pretty clear of what we've seen that moving your meals earlier in the day can be beneficial for a large subset of fasters. And we're going to unpack exactly what that looks like, right?
Yeah. So thinking back a few years, how many times did I do calories in, calories out, and I was tracking things, and then just kind of looking at a calorie, kind of a calorie is a calorie. That was one thing, but also a calorie in the morning is the same as a calorie at night, and so that can be problematic, not for everybody, but if you find yourself either knowing that you have some level of insulin resistance, or you don't necessarily have the data to back it up, but it feels like you do, like you're getting more lethargic after meals, you have these really big cravings, especially after eating more carbohydrate rich foods. It's tough to like close a window.
Or you feel sluggish after a meal.
Very, yeah, very much so. Think Thanksgiving dinner. It doesn't necessarily have to be that dramatic, but at the same time, if you're feeling like, oh man, I'm losing energy after a meal, then there's an imbalance there. And it could be on your plate, but it also could be with your physiology. It's probably with both. Um, and so thinking about it along those lines, and then kind of backtracking to the fact that the data shows that for a lot of us, a morning calorie is not the same as an evening calorie, because our physiological response to that calorie is different, even if the macronutrient ratio is the same. So that's where things get a little bit tricky, and where we can find another lever to pull here, which would be meal timing. So even if we hold calories the same, if we hold macronutrients the same, but then we just change the meal timing of it, which we can then integrate into our fasting lifestyle, we might have a substantial lever to pull.
And that's the thing is, most people, when we first started, the first resource we ever made was the Fast Start Guide. And it was like, pick your meal and go do it.
Yep.
Right? And most people, 9 out of 10, pick dinner. I mean,
Yes.
that is, as a family with 3 kids, the dinner table is an important time. So that becomes difficult in learning how to navigate that. And
How to say no to that.
Yeah, and how to say no. It can simplify your weight loss and ultimately your maintaining that weight loss journey which we know will lead to those longer health outcomes that we all want in terms of labs and prevention of disease and, blood sugar disease reversal and all of those different wonderful benefits, never mind just the weight loss, increased energy, decreased inflammation, better labs, cholesterol panels normalizing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a couple of the hardest things is when it comes, fasting is simple in concept, right? Just don't eat, but it's not as simple in application. So hunger is one of those big things that when you start fasting or you've fallen off and you're getting back on and you're trying to figure out how to get the consistency, hunger is one of those big things that can rear its evil head. And there are studies that we've seen and gone over in the past that people that skip breakfast, because if you look at fasting, you just Google it, Dr. Google it, it's like skip breakfast, eat between 12 and 8. And that's great for some people, but we're not all metabolically the same. So it's challenging the common belief that a calorie is a calorie regardless of when they're consumed. Yes, in its essence, it is a unit of energy, right? Sure.
Right.
But it's the metabolic effect or after effect that makes the application more difficult. So when we look at this study, it was really cool. And when we look at the overall framework of it, there's a morning loaded group and an evening loaded group. Now, both of these strategies were a weight loss strategy. So there was a caloric restriction. And the study found that there were no differences in total daily energy expenditure between the two diets, suggesting that metabolic adaptation does not explain the weight loss benefits. However, participants on the morning loaded diet, right, reported lower levels of hunger and appetite compared to those on the evening. And this is where the study shows, and this is what we want to talk about, consuming more calories in the morning may help control appetite throughout the day. Now, the pushback to that is a couple of things. One is if you eat a breakfast meal, some people get that post-meal lull. So they're like, oh, this is going to drag me down. I don't feel as good. Well, that's an indication that your body isn't able to process those calories and that energy in an effective way. The second part is that skipping breakfast for us in this family, without a little bit of planning and a few extra minutes in the morning with 3 kids under 8 and a wife who has a clinic, right, and a couple of businesses to run, the morning time is hectic. So when I was in full-time practice, I almost wore skipping breakfast as a badge of honor. I'm not a breakfast person, right, Tommy? And you've had these conversations, right?
For sure. And it's such an easy spot to kind of start off with, when you talk about weight maintenance and healthy lifestyle, a lot of people who I run into or I start talking about lifestyle stuff, they'll usually mention that kind of right off the bat, like, well, I'm not really much of a breakfast eater, and that's like that's a check mark. That's a checkbox for a win of a healthy lifestyle definition for a lot of folks, and it used to be for myself as well, but given all of the data, it's not necessarily the best way. It would be better physiologically speaking, based on all of the data that we've seen, if part of that healthy lifestyle component was, well, I'm not much of a dinner eater, or I'm okay skipping a dinner. Something like that would actually be more productive lifestyle-wise, weight maintenance-wise, blood work balance-wise, right? Rather than I'm not much of a breakfast eater.
Yeah, so the study had 30 overweight or obese individuals, but they were otherwise healthy. 2 4-week calorie-restricted diets, so 45% of your total intake of around 1,700 calories in this case was in the morning group, and 45% at the dinner group. Now, both diets were isocaloric and matched for macronutrients. One thing that I loved about this study, Tommy, which we don't see a lot of, but we're seeing more frequently, we did some episodes earlier this year about it, is this protein macronutrient.
Yep.
It's like a superpower.
Right.
It was 30%. So 30% of their total daily intake was protein. We typically see 15, 20, maybe 25 in a lot of the studies.
Yeah.
But this is something that we practice, what we preach, is that protein-paced meals are a superpower when it comes to hunger because it is the most satiating macronutrient.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we've reviewed a few studies that are pretty similar to this one, but the main difference being that some of the other ones went longer than this one. This one was 4 weeks, but
Right.
then
I would
the
like to
other,
see it have been longer, of course.
sure, of course,
They had a
but
great
then
washout period too, though.
yeah, that was nice. So it was actually a 12-week total study, but 4 weeks for the experimental component of it. So, but macronutrient wise, this one being at 30%, we can actually theorize that a lot of the similarity in the results between the morning loading eating and the evening loading was due to that high protein percentage. Because as we do that, then we start to see the differences in the groups start to minimize and converge as far as body composition changes go. Because what we've seen in some other studies that had much lower protein numbers, like you mentioned, was similar weight loss, but different body composition losses. So different changes in fat-free mass versus fat mass loss. And so in this one, and these weren't based on DEXA scan, which would be the gold standard for body
Right.
composition, but they were using some body composition metrics like you could use in a gym or something like that, like a bod pod type measurement, which is actually a fairly good one too. So when we look at that and we see this kind of convergence here, lack of differences between those groups, I'm definitely going to say that a lot of that may have been due to the increased protein levels.
And here's the thing, the angle that we want to take is, let me paint a picture. You're like, all right, I'm gonna eat today and then I'm gonna fast, or it's a fasting day, so I'm not eating today.
Okay.
And you go about your day and things are good, and you get home and dinner's happening and you smell the food, and then hunger kicks in and you show some restraint. You're like, no, I'm sticking to it. But then you open the pantry,
Mistake.
or you open the fridge, or I'll just have a handful of nuts. And then the floodgates open.
Yep.
Or if you find yourself doing a dinner OMAD and you finish your meal, but yet, Tommy, you alluded to this earlier, you can't close the window.
Yeah.
It just keeps going.
Right.
This
okay,
is,
now I'm going to set the timer now.
and now I'm going to set the timer now. So,
Yeah.
I'm going to do a 72-hour fast, but you find yourself eating dinner that night. This is
Been there.
not by chance, right? This is your physiology undermining your efforts. So in that situation, it's clear, and we've seen this in other studies as well, and we see it inside of our group, by shifting your meal earlier in the day, you're going to allow your cortisol and your circadian hormones to come down at night, and you're going to have a better rest. You're going to have less cravings. If you prioritize protein, you're going to see less of that behavior stuff kick up. Now, if you try it once, well, yeah, that's not a good sample size. You got to give this a couple of weeks to really set in and see if it's working for you, right? So if you make a change, give it a couple of weeks. But if you're struggling with that hunger or late night cravings while fasting, absolutely front loading the calories earlier in the day and moving that meal earlier in that window. Because the cool thing about this is the way the study was designed is that there were no metabolic changes in the calorie burn. It really showed up in the hunger cues and the appetite, which is one of the hardest things to do when you're looking for fasting consistency, is learning how to manage that hunger, right?
Right. And so the cool thing was here that I haven't seen reviewed in other similar study designs like this was their detailed look at hunger regulation, satiation, like on a hormonal level. So they were looking at ghrelin, the growling hormone. They were looking at GIP, gastric inhibitory polypeptide. They're looking at GLP-1, and they're looking at PYY, peptide YY. So what we actually saw in the data was that for all of these markers, the morning loaded group had a better response for gastric inhibition, so keeping blood sugar and digestion
So your
stable,
body's physiology working for you to
rather
make
than
the
against
lifestyle
you.
change and say no to the snacking behavior in the evening versus it working against you and setting yourself up for failure is what I'm hearing.
100%, making it to where you don't have to muster up so much more willpower to get the
Right.
job done because your body's not screaming a different tune to you while your
Right.
brain's going, no, 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 I just set my fasting timer. So these things all being being aligned physiologically towards your psychological goal of actually committing to this fast and executing on this fast, it's huge. And the fact of the matter is that you have a lot of folks who will, especially in the calories in, calories out camp, who would look at a study like this going, okay, well, obviously this is proving a calorie is a calorie, or you get the same results if you're going to have the calories at more in the evening or more at night or more in the morning, excuse me. So just calorie wise, it was about twice as many calories, 20 versus 45%, I believe,
Yep.
at breakfast versus in the evening, right?
So it
But
was 45% for the morning group at
mhm,
breakfast, 20% at dinner,
okay.
and then 20% at breakfast and 45% for the evening group.
Yeah, with the same lunch. So they
Yep.
just flip-flopped it morning or evening.
Yep.
So, but just making that one simple change, if that really just leads to a beneficial change in your underlying hormonal response to the same calories, the same macronutrients, that's enough to put
That's
this
not a big lever.
right.
Like you're not
It
changing anything else. You're just
right.
changing time.
Yeah. It's
Talk
enough
about
to
simple.
right. It's enough to go, this should be a tool in my tool belt, whether you're fasting or
Yes.
not. But with combine it with fasting, this is going to make your next fast easier, easier to complete, easier to stick to, easier to commit to. And that's huge. And ultimately easier to enjoy the process also. Because when you talk about fasting, you're talking about lifestyle. Even if you're like Schmo and you had a whole big bunch of weight that you wanted to lose, you're talking about setting out on 10 months for Schmo to drop over 100 pounds. You're going to want to enjoy the process as much as possible because it's going to increase the likelihood that you're going to stick with it.
By the way, 10 pounds a month is incredible.
Of course.
This study
Absolutely.
in 4 weeks, um,
They were
they
about
lost
6.
about 6.5 pounds,
Hmm.
between 6 and 7 pounds, both groups. But the reality is, we want to begin with the end in mind, right? So we want to have those tools in the tool belt where you can adapt. Because if we follow the 80% rule, which is something we teach, that means you out of 30-day month, that means you have 6 days where you're not consistent.
Hmm.
So you have wiggle room. We're not shooting for perfection, because if you're in the morning or the evening, it's not going to affect, and the study shows it, the amount of weight you're potentially going to lose. But it's
Hmm.
about that consistency muscle, because we know willpower is going to wane,
Of course.
right? So one of the other cool things about this study, Tommy, is I love that they used a CGM to assess
Yeah.
glycemic responses and participants following the morning loaded versus the evening loaded group.
Hmm.
And they saw similar glucose improvements, because we talk obviously a lot about insulin resistance and insulin and blood sugar. Both groups resulted comparable reductions in the 24-hour mean glucose levels and glycemic variability. So that means how much the blood sugar goes up and down, and those post-meal glucose spikes, right? So the evening postprandial spike, however, so the blood sugar spike post the evening group caused a significantly higher postprandial glucose rise between 8 p.m. and midnight compared to the morning group.
Mm.
So obviously, this was linked to a larger evening meal. However, for me personally, if I eat a big meal at night, like we
Yeah.
had over the weekend, we had a movie night with popcorn, and my wife ate like all the popcorn. Sorry, love, you did. And she's like, I just can't stop. It was so good. So we have these organic popcorn. I make it on the stove. We use avocado oil, Kerrygold butter, a little salt and pepper. Pepper, by the way.
Oh, is that the move? Yeah.
Sneaky, little pepper on the popcorn, sneaky.
Okay. I'll have to
Um,
try it.
and she wears a Whoop. She actually went out and slept on the couch, not
No.
because I snore anymore. Thank God I don't. I used to. Super tired nights, going to bed late sometimes, but it's very rare. So when I saw her on the couch, I was like, what the heck? Well, her Whoop said that her body temperature was 2.5 degrees higher.
Oh, wow. She was running hot.
She was running hot. So whenever we go on date nights, we try to go earlier because if we eat a bigger meal, like a
Yep.
celebratory meal, we go to our favorite restaurant.
Hmm.
I know for me that I need to eat light later, or else it's going to affect my sleep, which is then going to affect my ability to say no or stay consistent the next day. And we know that your metabolic ability to process blood sugar and your blood sugar variability goes down the following day after one night of 6.5 hours of sleep or less.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to prioritize sleep, which is what I love that this shows that, yeah, and we know we've done the study 8 a.m. versus 8 p.m., the same meal, you have less insulin sensitivity at night. That's by design.
Hmm.
Your cortisol stress response, your cortisol is coming down so you can rest and repair and get great sleep.
Yeah.
The
Insulin
cool thing
sensitivity is
is,
coming down too.
right, the cool thing is, again, to Schmo's point, what works for you? Because both of these approaches showed a 24-hour glucose area under the curve, and the incremental changes, they were equal.
Hmm.
So this is one of those trial and error things. If you're super busy in the morning and breakfast doesn't work and you only have an hour for lunch because you work a job that only allows you an hour. So by the time you leave and get lunch and then you want to go for a walk and get back to the office, there's constriction there. So it makes sense that dinner would be easier. But if you're finding yourself with that behavior where you're having trouble closing your window or you're super ravenous or super snacky, then I want to encourage you to maybe put a little planning into figuring out how you can get a high protein, healthy fat meal in the morning or midday
Hmm.
and give it a couple of weeks. You don't have to do this forever, but I would
Sure.
highly recommend this because I know this is true for me.
Yeah, and as an action step, I mean, what you could do if you want to wade into these waters, what you could do is, here comes the next weekend. If it doesn't sound feasible to move your
Oh, I love
OMAD,
where you're going with this.
right? To if it doesn't sound feasible to move your OMAD to breakfast or lunch right now, what about next weekend if you moved your window earlier, or if you moved your OMAD earlier? And then, you don't necessarily have to do it as a breakfast. It could be a lunch instead.
Yeah,
But and then
that's
and
my
so if
favorite thing. I love a big lunch.
yeah, and that's a great maintenance tool too. Um, and so if you're used to eating during dinner time, and most of the time you do, and you found it very difficult to skip dinner, um, make sure you have a plan for what you're going to do instead during that time.
Right.
So that would be a great time to do a deliberate walk, or maybe put your actual your physical activity routine, your exercise routine, maybe go to the gym, or lift a few weights, do something resistance training, something, uh, put some more dopamine later on in the day, so you have like a dopamine substitution, because you're not going to be getting any from the food during those evening hours. So be doing something else that you can enjoy, and then also have an interesting drink ready too, where maybe you got yourself a new decaf coffee, or a new tea, or a new type of
Maybe a
sparkling water.
chocolate element.
There you go, chocolate element. I love one of the, like a chocolate mint element, just with some hot water in the evening, and sometimes I'll sip on that, and that's really interesting to sip on for sure. And so it's it's very doable, and you don't have to change everything all at once and do this every single day to get the benefits of it. Because even just over the weekend, if that was 2 3 afternoons versus evenings, you're talking about 30 to 40% of the time right there. Like that's a big difference. You're going to see those results add up. It doesn't have to be Monday through Sunday that you
Right.
change everything in order to get those results, right?
Yeah, I absolutely love it because I love the fact that we always want to talk about beginning with the end in mind. So what does maintenance look like? Right? What does maintaining those changes look like? Well, that's lifestyle adaptation. That's habit formation. So I love the idea of the if then planning. Like, what's your strategy? What is it? We typically get stuck in this all or nothing thinking, and we have this big weight loss goal, right, off in the future, but then we don't have the consistent action based goals to get us there. And
Hmm.
that's why we love fasting because, for instance, Schmo's results. I mean, you can accelerate that fat, and we know get the weight off because that is going to help you, especially if you have insulin resistance or weight loss resistance or struggling with consistency. That's going to increase motivation and stop you having to rely on willpower and that on-off dieting type mentality.
Love
One of
that.
those biggest hurdles, which is why we talked about this today, is those hunger cues and that behavior in the evenings We hear this all the time, which is why if we look big picture takeaway from the study, so the meal timing doesn't alter the metabolism or the weight loss. Eating in the morning or early or midday can significantly reduce hunger, which ultimately is going to help with the adherence to your plan, which ultimately is going to result in long-term success, especially when you're trying to adopt a fasting lifestyle and or if you're someone that struggles with cravings or that late night eating, kind of having trouble closing your window. So I love this conversation. It's super applicable. It's applicable. It's applicable to anyone that's using fasting. And Tommy, final thoughts as we wrap up today.
Yeah, I think final thoughts would just be to, take something that you heard, let it sink in as far as a reason why you want to pull this lever and why it's justifiable to make an adaptation so that you can pull this lever of having at least some of your meals be earlier in the day, because it does matter.
Yep.
And it is going to make sticking to your next fast a little easier. It's going to make the process a little more enjoyable, which is going to absolutely increase the likelihood that you're going to keep going with it, that you're going to integrate this lifestyle faster and more consistently. Because what we want to do at the end of the day is get the weight off, keep it off, get the blood work in check, and keep it there ultimately, and have it become more and more intuitive over time, so that we don't feel like we're having to diet for the rest of our lives, but that we've adopted a different lifestyle that allows us to maintain a sense of control much more easily. And so absolutely taking a few of these steps and integrating them like this week, like start now, or make a plan for, maybe this coming weekend, whatever it may be, like write it down so you have it, and that you make sure you take those reps as quickly as possible.
Yep, absolutely love it. If you guys are looking for more support, head to the show notes. We've got our fasting quiz. We have our blueprint to fasting for fat loss, a whole host of other resources, a sleep guide, a journal. Join the next challenge. If you want to drink out of the fire hose and have fun with us for 7 straight days of live support and coaching, we do those 8 times a year. So head to the show notes. The link will be there for more information, FAQs, and how to sign up. Tommy, as always, man, I appreciate the conversation. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.
So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.